Karl Truman is with us every week. He brings sunshine and so much more. I want to open up the WBKI legal line, 502-276-2118. You got a workers' comp question, Social Security disability. A lot of people want to know about that. Or have you been involved in an accident? Call us right now, 502-276-2118. And you speak of accidents, this is the time of year.
Yeah,
Julie's going to be going everywhere. It's
Derby
Festival, it's Derby, people coming and going. People can slip.
And just the warm weather alone, people are getting out and wanting to cruise. So
well, and talking about cruising, I see someone rode a motorcycle into the studio today, and that's something that's getting motorcycle season now. So be aware of these bikes out on the road too, because that's very dangerous.
You know what, Karl? That actually, you bring up. There was a motorcyclist. I was driving around.
And
the
there
other
it is,
day.
right there.
Yeah, that's
right.
Kind of cool. But
that's a Harley.
they
I believe,
weave. A lot of cyclists, I see them. They weave in and out of traffic.
Is it a Harley or a Honda?
I mean, that's so dangerous. That's But if something were to happen, you kind of feel like you're the bigger car. Is it your fault? Is it their fault?
Well, we all have a responsibility to share the road, whether it's a motorcycle or a bicycle or a pedestrian. We all have a responsibility to share the road and watch out for each other and drive defensively. And of course, motorcycles, whether it's their fault or not, they're usually going to get the worst end of the deal.
Right.
So they have to drive even more defensively than people in cars. But even us in cars, we have an obligation to look for them, because they may not be as visible as another car due to their size.
Taking your phone calls, 502-276-2118, workers' comp, Social Security disability. What about if you've been in an accident? Where do you turn to? We know you can turn to the Truman Law Office, but we're taking phone calls.
And we have Karen from Louisville on the line. Hi, Karen.
Hello.
What's your question for Karl?
Right.
I'm calling. I live in an apartment building, and the doors on it are regular outside house doors, and it's a fourplex, and they've got a closure on it that's kind of industrial, made for, say, like 5-star with the 800-pound doors that shut. Well, I got hit in the face with this door, lost a tooth, called the landlord probably 5 times now, gone to the dentist, had surgically removed the root of it. He will not call me back. Now I'm in a position where I'm scared to death to bother him, because I don't want him, I don't want to have that kind of relationship with the landlord. But on the other hand, I don't have a tooth in the front of my face, and I'm, I just can't. This is unreal, and I don't know what to do. So I have no idea what to do with this guy.
Oh,
All right. Thank you, Karen.
That's horrible. So that sounded like the door was loose and came and hit her.
And it sounded like it was a heavy door, too. I thought she said it was a heavy door on this fourplex apartment, and maybe... I'm not sure exactly if it was loose or it was heavy or there was some disruption in it there, but what do you do when you're renting and there's a landlord and you think there's a problem? And is it a he said, she said situation?
Well, of course, as we always talk about, the key is documentation if there is a problem, whether it's a door or a loose step or a loose railing. A landlord should do the right thing. I mean, it all comes down to being responsible and doing the right thing. So they should be taking care of their property. I wouldn't want to be afraid to talk to my landlord about the problem. The question is, were they negligent? Was there some defect with the door? Was there a problem? Like some doors have to have those the hinges on it where it's kind of like to keep the wind from catching it, like you see in a commercial building. So the question is, was the landlord negligent? And just based on that, the limited description, I really can't answer that question. I don't know. Were they negligent? Was there some problem with the door that caused it to hit her? Without more information, I really can't tell if they were negligent or not.
Karen, what you might want to do is you might want to email Karl at the Truman Law Office and send him more information. He can certainly look at the information and would get back with you there, because I know you get a lot of people email you just for information.
But she's worried about making the landlord mad. But I mean, if someone,
forget about it.
Well, I mean, would I really want to live there if that's the way that the management's going to treat me as a paying tenant?
Well, wouldn't you say in that situation, and like any other accident, I would take pictures, document as much as you could. I mean, just in case you're able to use that,
Well, that's true as far as documentation, because so often things change. So once they do know if there was a problem, then they run out and fix it, and then once it's fixed and changed, then then there's a dispute. Well, what was it really like that, or what did it look like, or whether it's a pothole or a hole in the yard or a loose step. all of those things always happen. So it is important to document things.
Okay.
Hey, we're taking your phone calls, 502-276-2118, workers' comp, Social Security, disability. And what if you've been involved in a car accident? What if you don't think you're at fault? What do you do? Carl's here every Tuesday with the WBKI Legal Line. Now, someone stopped me the other day and said, will you ask Mr. Truman, if you're truly hurt on the job and you have witnesses that you're truly hurt on the job, they believe that workers' comp laws favor the employer and not the employee. Thought on that?
Well, generally they do, because under the workers' comp laws, first of all, it doesn't matter whose fault it is. It does not matter if the employer was at fault, where they took a guard off a machine and said do it anyway, or the employee's fault, where you just weren't paying attention and you stuck your hand somewhere it wasn't supposed to be. So workers' comp is truly no fault. It does not, as long as you're injured in the course and scope of your employment, then you are entitled to benefits. But the benefits are usually pretty bad. I mean, it's not like because you cannot sue your employer for negligence, so the remedy is very, very limited. So it really does protect the employer.
Why can't you sue your employer?
Because workers' comp, the legal phrase is what's called an exclusive remedy provision, where under workers' compensation laws, it protects the employers from any lawsuits. So in exchange for it being no fault, meaning that it doesn't matter whose fault it is, you can't sue your employer for if they really mess up. So, the recovery is restricted by statute, and so if you're seriously hurt, usually the recovery is fairly minimal compared to your loss.
Okay. And Carl, I'm just looking at the list of things that you concentrate and focus on. Personal injury law, that sounds pretty self-explanatory, but is that, I'm thinking about a lot of my friends who have small children, and again, as the weather gets warmer, the kids are at daycares, either daycare centers, sometimes they have them at gyms, and of course, they're kids. Things are going to happen, accidents are going to happen. In that situation, is that something that's usually going to be a he said, she said, was the caretaker negligent?
It depends. I mean, there are so many different variables to that. I mean, ultimately the question is, did they breach a duty of care or standard of care in caring for a child? Because, for example, I mean, yes, kids are going to fall and get bumped or get a bloody nose, but I've had cases in the past at daycares with small children. I mean, infants. One child was at a daycare and they weren't being watched, and they literally had their finger cut off in a door because someone they were playing around. They were a small child, and they were playing around a door, and someone slammed the door and literally amputated their finger. So
and it seems like that would be so hard to prove.
Well, when the finger's gone, it's pretty.
Oh no, not that in particular. But just if something happens while the child's at daycare and the caretaker says it was an accident, it's hard to prove that they weren't paying attention.
An accident doesn't mean it's that you're not responsible. I mean, I know, and that's why in the phrase, well, it was just an accident. When kids are playing and they bump into each other, oh, don't worry, it was just an accident. Well, an accident is typically because someone's not paying attention or someone is not acting responsibly. If you run a red light, that's an accident. But does that mean, oh, well, it's an accident, it's nobody's fault. And that's something that we hear a lot from insurance companies and their lawyers. Well, it was just an accident, it's nobody's fault. But no, it's usually an accident is from someone not paying attention.
Well, it's good having you with us. We're going to be talking about summer travel in just a minute, and I recommend, Carl said it before, buy one of those cheap cameras for $10, $12 with a flash. Throw it in your glove compartment, because if you're traveling this summer, night or day, take the pictures, and then he can look at them and figure it all out. But
so many cell phones now, almost all of them have cameras.
Well, some people like me can't figure out all that, so you go the old-fashioned
baby steps.
But Carl, good having you with us here. And if you need Carl, remember, it's 1-800-ACCIDENT, or go to TrumanLaw.com. We'll see you next Tuesday.
Thank you.
Thanks, Carl.
All right, Karl Truman is with us every Tuesday right here on WBKI with the WBKI Legal Line.